unfold. Remember that sci-fi movie from the 90s, Gattaca? You know, the one with the future where your entire life is basically decided by your genes before you're even born? For decades, that felt like this distant dystopian warning. Just a cautionary tale, right? Well, a major new report on reproductive technology has a pretty chilling conclusion. That future, it's not fiction anymore. It's already here. And this quote right here, this really gets to the heart of it. The report is basically arguing that the whole idea of our biology being a random lottery, just luck of the draw from nature, that's over. We are walking into an era of active, deliberate genetic choice.
So, how in the world did we get here? Well, the main idea is this. A bunch of different technologies have all converged at the same time. And together, they allow us to stop just accepting the genetic hand we're dealt and start actively stacking the deck before the cards are even played.
The way to think about this is as a massive shift in how we even approach having kids. On one side, you have what's being called a faith birth. It's the product of chance, of passion, where we all kind of accept that we're vulnerable to the genetic lottery. But on the other side, you have a scientifically managed process. It's all based on data, on screening, ranking, and optimization. We're moving from accepting our biology to trying to master it.
Okay, so what does this mastery actually look like in practice? Well, this brings us to the technology itself, which, and there's no other way to put this, basically creates a report card for embryos. You see, for years, the genetic testing of embryos, or PGT, was pretty straightforward. It was a simple yes or no question. Does this embryo have a major issue like Down syndrome, or a single-gene disease like cystic fibrosis? The goal was to avoid a specific, really serious illness. But now, we have something called PGTP, which stands for polygenic screening. And this changes the entire game. It's not a binary sick or healthy choice anymore. It's a ranking system. It's about asking which embryo is the best.
The engine driving this whole ranking system is called the polygenic risk score, or PRS. Now, it is absolutely crucial to understand. This is not a diagnosis. It doesn't tell you an embryo will get diabetes. What it does is analyze thousands of tiny genetic markers all across the genome to give a statistical probability, a risk score, for all sorts of complex things, from your risk of heart disease to how tall you might be.
And this is exactly the kind of impossible dilemma that parents are starting to face. You look at this mock report card. Embryo A has a really high risk for breast cancer, but a low risk for heart disease. Embryo B has more average disease risks, but is predicted to be much taller and score significantly higher on cognitive ability metrics. What do you choose? And here's the key takeaway. The goal is no longer just about avoiding sickness. It's about optimizing for what we perceive as success. Parents are now being forced to make these complex trade-offs. And of course, whenever you have a complicated, high-stakes choice like this, a market pops up to help you make it. This technology has been commercialized incredibly fast, creating a whole new industry built around selling the potential for a better child. When you look at the companies in this space, you see this really interesting split. You've got companies like Genomic Prediction, who are very careful to stick to an official health-only line. They focus on reducing the risk of diseases like cancer. But then you have startups like Heliospec Genomics, who are much more explicit, allegedly marketing the ability to select for an IQ gain of over 6 points, not to mention cosmetic traits. That line between health and enhancement, it's not just blurry, it's become a business strategy.
And wow, the marketing is incredibly powerful. Take this slogan, choice over chance. It completely reframes the conversation. It suggests that leaving things up to nature, to the randomness of the genetic lottery, is a failure. It's a failure of parental responsibility. The message is pretty clear. A good parent doesn't roll the dice when they have the chance to stack the deck.
So what happens when a society starts to really embrace this logic? What are the consequences when a child's genetic potential becomes just another product you can buy? Well, that's where we get to the rise of a new kind of class divide, a genetic one. Okay, so the first and most obvious barrier, the price tag. A single cycle of IVF combined with this kind of advanced screening can easily run you tens of thousands of dollars. And if you really want to maximize your odds for a complex trait like IQ, you need a big batch of embryos to pick from, pushing that price tag up toward $50,000 or even more. This isn't for everyone. Let's be clear, this is a luxury good. So why would anyone pay that? Well, the financial incentive is just staggering. Economic research suggests that even a single extra IQ point can correlate to a 1 to 2.5% increase in lifetime income. So if you're talking about a 6-point gain, that's not just an edge in school. That's potentially a 15% boost in lifetime earnings. You're not just buying genes, you're buying a shot at greater economic mobility.
And this is it. This creates the exact scenario that bioethicists and sci-fi writers have been warning us about for years, a society that splits into two. You've got the gen-rich, a kind of hereditary elite who can afford to turn their financial capital into genetic capital. And then you have the naturals, the unenhanced majority.
This has the potential to just rip apart our social contract. Think about our insurance systems, our social safety nets. They're all built on this idea of shared risk, what the philosopher John Rawls called the veil of ignorance. The basic idea is that since none of us knows our genetic fate, we all agree to pitch in to a collective pool. But what happens when the wealthiest people can effectively screen out genetic risk for their kids? That fundamental sense of shared vulnerability just evaporates. Class lines don't just get harder, they threaten to become biological facts. So all of this brings us to some really deep, final questions about what it even means to be human in a world where we can start to engineer luck right out of the equation. There's a philosopher, Michael Sandel, who I think just nails the core ethical problem here. He argues that when we shift from seeing children as gifts to be accepted to designing them as products to be perfected, we lose a critical sense of humility. Parenthood risks becoming this high-stakes form of quality control, a kind of hyper-parenting, where a child is a project to be managed rather than a gift to be cherished.
And you have to understand, this is just the beginning. Embryo selection, that's just step one. The next frontier, which is already moving fast, is gene editing, with technologies like CRISPR. That's where you're not just picking the best hand from the deck, you're actually going in and rewriting the cards themselves. And then, on the horizon, is a technology called IVC, which could potentially let scientists create thousands of embryos from just a few skin cells, making the power of selection almost limitless.
Which leaves us with a final and pretty unsettling question. As this technology gets more common, as the social and economic pressure to optimize your child grows, do we reach a point where choosing to have a baby by chance, a natural birth, is no longer seen as normal, but as a form of parental negligence, a moral failure? That's the world we are now building, one embryo report card at a time.